I got a question from a subscriber, Roman209, I think is the guy's name. Hope I got that right. I did not put it in annotation. And he wanted to know how I got into bikes. And I told him it's a long story, so I won't type it into the little text box you get on channel pages. I'll do a vlog about it. So this is it. So it's years ago. When I was a kid, I used to love riding around my push bike. Crazy about it. All summer, hours and hours and hours out on the bike. Back in those days, kids didn't even wear helmets on bikes. Like I came off that bike loads of times. Well, at least 3 times. Twice I ended up in a doctor's office, once with a stitch in my head. Another time I ended up in the hospital getting x-rays to see did I fracture my chin. And without fail, just about every time I came back from a crash, what was the first thing I wanted to do? Hop on the bike. So I was crazy about that sort of 2-wheel thing and leaning in turns and all the rest of it. Thought it was the best thing ever. When I went to college, I kept seeing these kids going around on bikes, and one bike I constantly saw was a Honda CB250, and I just thought it looked great. It had the racing colours on it and everything, and I thought, yeah, I want one of them. But at the time, just couldn't afford it. No way I could make it work. Which, with the kind of money I had when I was going to college, which wasn't a hell of a lot. So when I finished college and started working, I was still a little broke. So I needed a set of wheels, and the first set of wheels that came to light that I could afford was I knew someone who was selling a car because they were moving to I think it was Canada they were going to. So anyway, this car, I ended up buying this car. It was a crappy little Ford Fiesta. It cost me like £1,400, and which I thought was pretty alright. I could afford. So I had that car for a couple of years. Just got used to having a car. After 2 years, the engine started to fail on it, which could have been my doing, but you know, these things happen. So I ended up replacing that. I bought a Peugeot 206, which again, it was I just desperately needed to replace the car, so I got that. So I hadn't been thinking about bikes for ages at this stage, but around the time I bought the 206, I started watching MotoGP racing again, and it kind of re-sparked my interest in it, and I started thinking about bikes. Then, but of course, I'm working a few years at this stage, so other things start coming on your mind, like, I don't know, buying somewhere to live, so you're not paying rent your whole life. And I needed to replace my 206 because the engine had started to fail on it again. Anybody notice a theme here? So, yeah, earlier this year, 2009, kind of around the start of the summer, I started thinking about the bike again, and the bank balance was kind of getting back to a stage I was comfortable with buying the bike. So I did lots of research, watched loads of videos on YouTube, joined a couple websites, and bought a few books, and I started buying some bike magazines. Found them quite useful. Then eventually I decided I wanted to get a bike, so I did lots of research on what you can get. And as you know, we have power restrictions in this country for anyone who's 18 and above and on their learner's permit. So the most powerful bike you can get within that is the Kawasaki Ninja 250. You can get bigger bikes like a Harley, and you can get away with it because they're so heavy that the power to weight ratio is still net, even though they have more than 33 brake horsepower, 34, whatever it is. So I did lots of research, got them to deliver the bike to my house. They don't do it themselves, they have a guy, they just give you his card, you ring him. So I rang him and he said, yeah, it'll be €50 to bring it to your house. So I got the bike on the 9th of the 9th, 999, which I thought was funny. And he delivered it right outside my house, and I'd never ridden a bike before. And I didn't have anyone there to show me how to ride a bike or anything. All I had was the info I'd read, seen on various videos on YouTube, and you can read it on YouTube, but don't just watch one video and go, hey, I can do that. Like, make sure you know exactly how everything works. I mean, obviously I have the benefit of knowing how to drive a manual car, so I know all about the clutch and the friction zone, and, you know, the gears and how what it feels like to stall a vehicle and what it feels like to take away to drive off the first too quick and all the rest of it. So he dropped it outside my house, and I was actually working from home that day, which I'm not doing today. I'm driving to work, and yeah, I pretty much hopped on it and got used to the controls. And I had already bought my jacket, my gloves, my helmet. I didn't have proper riding pants, I didn't have proper boots. So anyway, I drove it just up and down the road, just about 100 meters, and stopped and, you know, walked it around a circle and drove it back the other way, and then decided to try a turn, and I did a turn okay, and did another one, and I went up and down the road, and the trip meter, I think I actually put 0.8 of a mile on the trip meter, just going up and down that road. And then where I live, it's an apartment complex, and right behind there is a car park, and I was a bit paranoid about getting the bike into the car park, because there's a hill, and then right at the top of the hill there's a very sharp turn to the left, and after about 0.8 of a mile I thought, okay, I can do this. So I went to the car park and got myself up the hill and made the turn, and was dead happy with myself. And then I did about another 0.8 of a mile in the car park, and I stopped for the day, and that was it. That was my first experience on a bike. So I decided, I mean, I could have kept going, but I decided better to stop and let my brain absorb all this crazy stuff that I had just done on a bike, like starting it, getting into second gear, stopping it, using the front rear brakes and all the rest of it. So yeah, I carried on like that for about 3 or 4 days, just putting in a few hours practice, parking lot practice, car park practice, and eventually I got my learner's permit in the post a few days later, and I was going up and down the road, and I hadn't really left my home village. I was just kind of going up and down the village and in and out of various housing estates. I didn't feel 100% comfortable with certain things, like doing hill starts and stops, you know, certain things like that, and really low speed turns were quite tricky as well. So I decided I'm not going to go onto any proper roads until I've done that. And eventually, while I was doing that, I went off and bought proper riding pants and boots, which just, you wouldn't think they'd make much of a difference. They make a hell of a lot of difference to your confidence. So they were pretty good. And then after that, I at my own pace went down onto proper roads. So that's it. That's how I got into bikes. One of them from being a kid. A few times I had the opportunity to get one, but I ended up going with the easier option of a car, got into MotoGP, watching all that, loving all that, and then eventually, once the money was secure, I had my car in case I needed it.